All right, guys, I am here with Mr. Matt Linland. Matt, first, for all of the post-mill reformed Christendom people in the room who may not know who you are, tell us who you are, tell us your background.
I'm a Christian and a husband and a father first, and that's like my identity is in Jesus. And but as far as what I've done in my life, I've competed in multiple world championships, come away with a silver medal, and won Olympic Games, and was blessed enough to get on the podium there and take a silver medal as well. And then I spent a decade fighting in an organization called the Ultimate Fighting Championships, among other organizations. So I've been a lifelong martial artist, but I think there's a lot more depth there because there's a lot of other things that I have more interest in than just combat sports and fighting. Right now, like my passion right now is just helping kids, helping families learn how to raise kids, and just being a good father. And so, and I'm a businessman. I run a martial arts school in Portland, Oregon.
Yeah.
And out of that school, we also run a nonprofit to help get kids off the streets and onto the mats training. And we want to expand that into outdoors experiences and other options like that. But just really it's serving children and families.
Yeah.
But mostly I spend a lot of time teaching men how to fight. That's really what they want to do. I was running when I started this business. I was actually running another business. I was selling cars, and in the back of my car lot, I had a mat, and I was training for the Ultimate Fighting Championships. And people just started coming in off the streets and saying, "Will you teach me how to fight?"
Yeah.
And so we kind of started the gym out of that, and I closed the car business down and said I would rather teach people how to fight, because I had been a coach. I coached Division I wrestling at University of Nebraska, college wrestling there, which was where I competed at.
I was going to say that you're an alumni, right?
Yeah. So, I guess so. Just found out 2 days ago that I'm going to be inducted in the 25 Hall of Fame for wrestling. So that's kind of a big thank you. So I don't think I'm an official Hall of Famer until the ceremony. It's going to happen in early June of 25.
That's awesome. Was that pretty exciting to hear that?
It's just a byproduct of doing what I love to do. And no, I never set out to get in the Hall of Fame.
Right. Yeah.
But I did set some goals, and pretty high goals of being world and Olympic champion, which I never accomplished either one of those, but I was real close. I was right on the podium next to the.
You were right there, though. Yeah. Man, that's really cool. I know, just talking to you so far this week, and it seems like the coaching side of things, the helping young men side of things, getting boys into situations where they can be boys, but channel that in the right direction, seems to be kind of your passion now.
Yeah. Boys, God created boys, to be fighters, and young boys don't know how to channel that.
Yeah.
As I know from experience.
Yeah.
I learned that from experience, and I had some great mentors. I had some godly coaches. I've had, I call it transformational or transactional coaches. That I had either one or the other. I literally, coaches were either totally transformational, changed my life in a positive way, or it was all about them and what you could accomplish for them, because they got the notoriety because they were the leader or the coach of an athlete. And so when I got into coaching, I wanted to model after transformational coaches. It's about having an impact, and you have to know these athletes. You have to build relationships with them before they're going to listen to you. I mean, you can't just come in and say, "I'm the coach, listen to me. I actually have all this knowledge and wisdom." You have to build relationships, and then they want to come to you and say, how can I learn? How can I grow?
Right.
And that's kind of how I coach, man.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but the connection between these physical things and that making men into men thing seems like something that you can't sever. It has to be there. The physical side of this physical struggle, this physical hardship, this entering into that that it like an agon, like a combative space.
That's interesting because I actually started a ministry called Agon.
Really?
And it was, yeah, it was, it grew, it kind of, just ebbs and flowed. But, the vision was to get men to know the gospel.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of guys in the fighting space. Like they're really attracted to this sport of UFC and ultimate fighting. And there's some guys like Ken Shamrock who grew up, the stories that he told about his childhood and growing up were like polar opposite of my childhood. I had one of the most blessed childhoods. I would live next door to my great grandfather, and he was a logger and he was a strong believer. And my grandparents moved next door to them because they got older and they wanted to take care of them. He was a plumber. I was just strong men that did manly things. And I had a dad and I was just around family. And
Yeah.
a guy like Ken Shamrock was growing up in a room next to his mom doing tricks in the room next door. And it was just like, oh, wow. Like, this is,
Yeah.
this is hard. But the whole purpose was there's guys that maybe want to hear Randy Couture or Ken Shamrock or myself speak, and we're going to share the gospel.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about Jesus, but we're going to get them in there with the, hey, meet these fighters. Let's watch UFC together.
Yeah.
Let's fellowship. Let's hang out and just kind of share that, plant that seed. And I got some incredible speakers to come down. At that time, Gary Bashir, Mark Driscoll, Ryan, his dad ran the Dobson, Ryan Dobson.
Okay, yeah.
He came and spoke for one of those.
Yeah.
He's a great guy. I love Ryan. And then I got to move to Colorado, which is where he lives. So I spent some time there with him. And
Cool.
so it was literally Agon was what we called it. So
I love that. That's something we've been talking about a good bit is like the need for this masculine agonistic culture to come back where guys can it's not always a physical fight, but like that we can sort things out face to face.
Yeah, but the parallels, the physical parallels the spiritual.
Yeah.
And for the longest time, I understand the gospel and I understand that we are in a spiritual battle. But I've been blessed to not have any attacks and stuff. But then I saw it in real life when this 2020 thing happened.
Yeah.
And my organization, I work for under the IOC, under the USOC, Olympic committees, and then I work for an NGB, which is USA Wrestling, which NGB is national governing body. So we're all under this umbrellas, and the wokeness just kept permeating into the fields, and we to the point where we're seeing men fight women in the Olympic Games, and we're celebrating that.
Yeah.
And I could no longer be a part of this. So I had to leave, a job that I dreamed of being a part of.
Yeah.
You're now the Olympic coach, and I coached for 2 Olympic cycles in Rio and Tokyo Games. And then I just had to move on. I had to get out of there and go back to Oregon and be around my family again. And
Right.
so I've seen the parallels of that fight, and that was actually more my talk when I was running the Agon Ministries.
Yeah.
But now the ministry I'm really focused on is children.
Yeah.
And like Doug Wilson says, it's easier to guide the young men than fix broken men,
Yeah, absolutely.
or something like that. And maybe I'm paraphrasing
He's
it,
got a
but
few, but that one's a good one. He
but
also says, like,
that's kind of the mission.
if we don't teach the boys, the men won't know.
That's the line.
Yeah. And I love that, man. I think a lot of what we're doing too is sort of not to bag on those guys, but it's sort of like they didn't learn when they were younger, and now they're in mid.
They crave it,
and they crave this capability, this ability to be dangerous if it's needed. And I think that's what true meekness is. We don't really talk about this much, but like a guy like you, that has the potential for great violence, but is not constantly pulling that sword out. But it changes the presence that you have if you can walk into a room with the capability. It changes everything. And you were talking about this at one of the churches you were at in Colorado, and being in a room with when the 2020 stuff happened. like being in a room with guys that are actually dangerous,
Oh.
and the speed to which you can take stands and go, no, we're not going to keep our church shut down for 2 years.
Yeah.
No, we're not going to stop singing. No, we're not gonna all be, wearing face diapers forever. And like the ability for men to lead that way is absolutely connected to this physical nature that we have.
Yes, I mean, like I look at the way Pastor Wilson fights, and I'm like, that dude could fight.
Yeah,
Like that guy can fight. I can fight in the ring, I'm learning how to fight spiritual battles. And my first default, I guess, is just like just back out. Just okay. I don't want to be in. I don't want to be in this combat.
yeah,
Because I've had a lot of fights. I know what fighting is, and I don't want to get in the mud and the weeds, and especially with this group of people. It's like it doesn't serve me to fight them. I would just say I'm going to go over here and I'm going to train up young men to learn how to fight.
right.
There's some battles that I'm not equipped to fight, like Doug. Like
Yeah,
I study the Bible and I know the scripture, and I just crave it more. I want to know more about the Lord and Jesus, and because I want to emulate him.
yeah,
That's my example.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to be more of a fighter in that world as well.
yeah,
And that's why I gravitated towards an event like this, and I found a Reformed church, and ultimately it's an hour and a half from where I live. It's not in my community. It's so hard. We got to build those things.
yeah,
So I don't know what those answers always are. I'm just trying to navigate this, and I'm asking the Lord to guide me.
Yeah.
And I definitely felt the Lord calling me to leave the Olympic organization and USA Wrestling and the IOC and the USOC, and they're not going the same direction that I'm going, and that's to follow Jesus.
yeah. And I'm thrilled that there are guys like you that the Lord is calling out of those things with your experience, your expertise, your ability to contribute, but taking it from an organization like that and then putting it somewhere else that the Lord's going to use is a huge step for this entire, like, for Christendom in general. And I think you're on the right track. I love let's just start at the basics. Like, let's start with young men. Let's teach them what that is. Teach them how to, like, not to be weak. We don't want to turn them into women.
Yeah.
Like, we want to make them effeminate. They should be strong. They should be capable of, like, danger and violence. They should be comfortable being uncomfortable. But we want that channeled in the right direction. And I think, to your point, like, that we need these communities being built. Well, someone's got to build them.
Yeah.
And you're going to need strong men, not just physically, not just spiritually, but both.
Oh, absolutely.
They can do that kind of work. They can bear heavy burdens in every sense of that phrase, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. How, like, last question here. How do you think your upbringing, being from like this wrestling background, the hardship of that, the physicality of it, and then learning how to try hard, like learning how to contend, how has that helped in your faith?
Well, I mean, wrestling isn't really my background. It's interesting how I got into this. I was an equestrian athlete.
Really?
Yeah, and I dreamed of going to the Olympics as an equestrian.
Really?
As a stadium jumper, and I trained with a coach who was on the 1980 Olympic team, and that was kind of how I was inspired and to be an Olympian and strive to be the best in the world. I mean, like, we get kids and we tell them, oh, maybe you can be a state champion. I had a coach that said, you can be an Olympic champion, you can be a world champion. And it was like, go for that
Yeah.
goal. Don't settle for being the best in your little pond,
I love that.
and it's like, be the best you can be. Possibly you can be the best in the world at
Yeah.
your craft
Yeah.
and study that craft. But like I said, I grew up very rural, and one day when I excelled in my sport of equestrian, my parents told me, listen, we can't afford you to do this sport. I didn't know we were poor.
Right.
I mean, my young childhood was super blessed. I had two parents. I lost my mom early when I was in my early 20s. My grandfather died right after that. I mean, struggle time. I mean, these were my people, you know, that I just, my family.
Yeah.
And, but at that time, my mom was like, "Oh, I think you should find a new sport." And I was just like, "What? What do you mean? This is, I've dedicated my life up until high school to this sport."
Really?
And just being and I love animals, and I love husbandry and animal husbandry, and just being a part of nature and the animals. And it was like, "Why don't you try this wrestling thing?" And I was just drawn to it.
Yeah.
I was just absolutely like fascinated, more so than, because when you're a young man and you're an equestrian athlete, what do all the other young boys think you are? They think you're effeminate.
Yeah.
They think you're weak.
Yeah.
You're I mean, it's only girls that ride horses. You know, and it's like, you know, what do I want to be when I grow up? I was like, a cowboy. I didn't know that wasn't like a real career path.
I love that.
You know,
Yeah.
and so when I was like, and I took this art and I was like, "Oh, these guys that bully me, oh yeah, I'm gonna get back at them. Now I know how to fight."
Right.
But I wasn't fighting for the right reasons and the right causes. I was just fighting for my ego.
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh, you think you can beat me? Like, let's fight." I'm learning how to fight.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'd get beat up.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about combat sports, whether it's wrestling or jiu-jitsu or boxing. I don't care, MMA, whatever the sport you choose, or the discipline in that sport, you're going to learn lessons about being humbled. Because no matter how good you think you are, there's always somebody out there that's going to be better.
Got a better bag of tricks.
And
a little longer.
Yeah, and you get to learn that, and then you get to go humble yourself and say, "How can I learn from you?"
Right.
And that's kind of what drew me to just learning the gospel, is like, I want to know Jesus, and I can read and I can study, but I need some strong mentors that have been in this game a long time.
Yeah.
To guide me. And I was drawn to certain guys, and the internet, you know, as much as there's so much evil on there, there's so much good on there. There's so many, it's so neutral. It's like, is YouTube good or bad? It's like, well,
That's not how you use it.
and you know, Doug's talk today, you know, it's not which or it's whether, you know, it's like, it was just so fun to learn more about Jesus and what we were created for. And I want to share that with the young men, the youngest guys. I want to guide them to be strong. I want them to understand what fitness is, nutrition is, what discipline is. And, you know, every week we have a certain lesson with our kids. And, you know, I think last week it was discipline. The week before it was control. How do you control an opponent? How do you control yourself? How do you control your emotions? And so going back to those parallels of combat and spiritual, it's like,
Yeah.
how do we control ourselves? Well, not by us, by the grace of God,
Right.
and getting to know Jesus and spending time in His Word, so we know Him better. And you just sprinkle that into these kids and their lessons every day. You're just feeding them a little more, and they're children. They need milk.
Yeah.
They need milk.
Yeah.
But when I was getting the gospel and sharing it, all I was getting was milk for a long time. And it drew me to go seek this out.
Yeah.
Go seek out men that are bold and are willing to fight in the culture.
Yeah.
And I want to be strong enough that I'm out there fighting in the culture too.
Yeah.
And, you know, because I mean, I'm 54 years old. I'm going to probably need a shoulder replacement. My knees are bad. You know, I was like, I don't know how much longer I can fight physically,
Right.
literally, to do this. But I love what I'm doing, and I hope it's making an impact on children and families in our community. And, you know, my ministry is a Father's Heart Combat Sports. You know, and when you apply for like a government grant, and the government comes in and goes, "Oh yeah, we want to give money to good causes," and you go, "Oh, here's a good cause." "Oh, you're fighting?" Yes, we're directing young men in their God-given nature,
Right.
to do what they're going to do, but do it for the Lord.
Right.
So I mean, it's a battle, it's a struggle every day. But that's life until we meet Jesus. I mean, it's going to be a struggle.
Yeah. And so, like, the more you're comfortable in those situations. Right. Because you're gonna be in it. Quit trying to shy away from it.
Yeah.
This is just the way the world works. I love that, man. As far as your stuff, what you're doing, I know you got your gym in Portland.
Mm-hmm.
Where can people go to find more information about that and what you're doing there?
Well, my gym is Team Quest, and it's just tqmma.com. If you put in Team Quest, it'll probably pop up.
Awesome.
Pretty high on the Google search. The Father's Heart Combat Sports website doesn't have that kind of SEO with it. It's,
right.
We're in our first year as a nonprofit. We raised $30,000. We bought gis. We've bought boxing gloves. We've paid for entry fees. We've paid for gym memberships for young men. And one of the things that we do is we provide healthy snacks, because these kids are coming from school. They're at school all day long. They're in the government school system. And they come out of there and they're just eating garbage at schools, and they're eating garbage at home. And, you're hearing, if I do good, can I go to Mickey D's? And you're like, oh, and so you just want to, like, your heart just goes out. You're like, here's some grapes.
Yeah.
Here's some carrots. Like, eat healthy, eat real food.
Right.
So, I mean, those are the things that I'm about is a healthy lifestyle, spiritually and physical. And it sounds like that's what you guys do.
Absolutely.
Man, and you're teaching men how to do that, and I want to share that with the men as well, but I really want to get that into the habits into the kids, and so they see the benefits. They see, oh wow, I have more energy, I'm feeling better, I'm able to train more, I'm healthier,
I'm more confident. Like, you carry yourself differently. Absolutely. We're doing the same thing with these grown guys. There are a lot of them are young guys, but doing the same thing with men. And I absolutely, this stuff started early for me. Sounds like it started early for you.
Well, I started in high school. The healthy, training and physical fitness,
consistency, daily habits, discipline.
But as a child, all you need to do is get outside and play.
Yeah, do something.
Just, and I don't remember ever being in a house. Not that we had a ton of property. We had like a 6-7 acre lot. But. Like I said, my grandparents had another 5 acres. My great grandparents, so felt big. It was just the world was huge. I mean, I could walk to the creek by myself. I could go to the rivers. I could take a fishing rod. I could jump on my horse. I just really had a blessed childhood.
Yeah.
And I wanted to give that same thing to my kids. Yeah. And I was able to do that. I was able to, in the world and the time that my kids grew up in, just provide them with the most idyllic childhood they could have.
That's awesome.
And, I love my children. I love my wife. I get to, spend, that's all I want to do is spend time with my family. And, but I do enjoy meeting men that are on the same spiritual journey.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's the gravitas, so the pull of how did I end up here? And how did I end up going to a Reformed church, and how did I, travel up to Moscow and like meet people there? And
I think fighters tend to find each other, even if they've got different battles going on, even if they fight in different ways in different arenas, they end up gravitating together. It seems like that's what's happened with you and these guys. And man, I'm not gonna lie, it's been majorly encouraging to me to like meet you this weekend and know that you're involved in this. It's a big deal to me to see these worlds sort of like that I'm big fans of clash like this and come together and mesh. And I am.
Well, maybe there's like a combat side of your thing.
That would be
that we could help guide you with, put you in those directions. Because I've been involved in, I started in wrestling. And the next thing I did was I was fighting. I competed in the Olympic Games in October, and December that same year I was fighting in the UFC. And
it was quick.
Yeah, people were like, "Oh, how did you do that?" And it's because I know how to fight.
Yeah,
I know how to train. I know how to prepare for competition and combat. Did I have all the skills? No, I had to acquire them, and I didn't acquire them in 2 months.
Right. Yeah.
I just went out and did it, and. There's you can plan, and never step in the arena.
Yeah.
Or you could just step in the arena and start figuring it out on the way. And I'm more that type of guy of I'm gonna step in. Oh, I want to do that. I'm gonna step in I'll tell you a story about another sport not related to equestrian athletes or combat sports, but whitewater.
Okay.
So whitewater, it's a fairly dangerous activity. I've actually lost a friend on the river, not more than one, but one I was with
Really?
when it happened. Yeah, but a group of men came into my gym and said, "Hey, listen, we're a world class whitewater team. We race rubber boats, so we train as a team. There's you've got kayak, which is this individual, and I look at that like kayak is like a wrestler, a jiu-jitsu player, or a boxer.
Yeah.
And then you've got the team. It's a 2-man, a 4-man, or a 6-man. It depends on the race. It depends on the event." And they said, we want a place to train. Is there any way you could sponsor us? What does that look like? Well, we need this equipment. See all these weights you have and these barbells and these pull-up bars, and we want to access this stuff. And I said, well, yeah, because we run our fitness stuff early in the day. So if you came in after 6 p.m., you could have this delayed. You could have this facility delayed. Use this facility. So they said, oh, our first race, why don't you come watch us?
Yeah.
So it's up on the White Salmon, the Columbia River Gorge. And the White Salmon is a solid Class 5 run. And no, this wasn't the White Salmon. This was the Wind. Sorry, got my rivers wrong. They're all in the same area.
Yeah.
Right in the same gorge.
Yeah.
This was the Wind River, which is another Class 5 run. And so I went up there. They said, well, why don't you jump in the boat? We'll take a practice lap. It's winter. It's the middle of the winter. And we're going, when people think of whitewater, they're like, oh, splash and giggle. It's warm. I got a rash guard on. And no. And I'm like, well, I don't have gear. Well, we got gear. Okay. So threw me in a Class 5 run. And I'm with a group of really knowledgeable, experienced whitewater experts, and
Yeah.
And they run me down there and they're like, okay, we're going to get set up. Here's where you want to watch us race. And the next week they go, oh, hey, do you want to join us for a race? I'm like, I literally don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know how to compete.
Uh,
Yes, but I don't know what I'm doing.
yeah.
So we went down to Southern Oregon, 5 hours away, run the Upper Kalama River, which Upper Kalama now, they just took the dam out. There's all kinds of exciting things, but it was a dam run. They had a dam, and below the dam, there was this beautiful Class 5 section of whitewater. And so I raced it this was an R2, so RAF 2 person, R2.
Okay.
And so I had one teammate. We had multiple R2s competing from this team, but this specific race was R2. Well, I locked up my scalings in both necks like this because I was like, and I was like, again, I don't know what I'm doing. I literally had to go to a doctor and have him shoot lidocaine in both my scalings, so I can move my neck.
Really?
So then it was like, okay, you got to teach me technique. Well, it's core strength, it's hips. It's like, oh, I've been doing that my whole life.
Right.
Now, if you teach me how to reach and stroke and involve my hips in this sport, so then we ended up placing in the nationals every year, winning the Northwest Championships, which is Oregon, Washington, California, Northern California, Idaho.
Yeah.
So all these rivers around the Pacific Northwest. And so I competed for 7 years on national team and met people from Colorado. So when I moved to Colorado, the team that beat us at nationals called me up and said, hey, I heard you just moved to Colorado. Why don't you come up and train with us? We're getting ready to go to the World Championships. So we went up on the Arkansas River and Pine Creek section, which, I mean, it's always about this new experience, this new canyon that you can see and God's creation. You're just like, unless you know how to paddle this boat, you can't get in here. You can't visualize this. It's just like so exciting of a sport. But I took the skills of knowing how to compete and knowing how to learn technique and being coachable.
And being extremely physically capable.
Yeah, I was capable.
And implied it.
And I applied this to another sport and was excellent. But I'm in my mid-40s at this time. And I'm like,
cool.
I took on a new sport in my mid-40s and competed till I was just literally, my body cannot do this anymore.
Yeah.
Let the young men take over.
Yeah.
So I mean, I got a lot of passions.
That's awesome.
But they're kind of involved around, just being active, being out, and being in nature, being physically fit. And my newest hobby is elk hunting.
Oh, I love it. I knew it was gonna come up. I didn't know if you're an elk hunter or not, but I could just tell like you would be into that kind of thing.
I fish. I salmon fish and I steelhead fish. And winter steelhead is like this elusive fish, and it's like the worst conditions. Your eyelets are freezing up, and you know. So I never got into elk hunting, but I moved to a world class area of elk.
Yeah.
I'm in the northern coast of Oregon, and
Is it Roosevelt Bulls up there?
Roosevelt Bulls, and it's and so one of my former athletes who's a sponsored hunter, he's like gets the gear, he gets this guy here, we'll give you binoculars, we'll give you scopes, we'll give you a rifle. He's that level. He's not getting paid, but it's pretty high level kid, and he's like, oh, you took up hunting, coach? I'm like, yeah. He goes, Saddle Mountain unit, huh? I'm like, how did you know? He goes, well, you told me where you're from, and I just figured. He's like, you don't want to hunt there. You want to hunt here because of these reasons. It's too tough because the timber's too thick. It's too steep. It's too wet. I'm like, but I live there.
Yeah, that's where I live.
I can sleep in my own bed and then go hunt in the morning.
That's awesome.
So I want to learn in this arena, and that's coming up in just a couple weeks. I got my elk season, so I'm excited to learn a new skill.
That's so cool. I think that's extremely encouraging for a lot of these young guys who have never done a bunch of this physical stuff, never done these things outside, never been in a weight room before, never been in a gym before. Maybe they've never put on a gi before, and they're like extremely intimidated by it. But to hear guys who excelled in one thing but are complete beginners in this new thing.
Oh, it's so humbling. It's so humbling.
It's like eating that humble pie.
I fished growing up. I fished my whole life, and I'm still the worst guy I go with.
Yeah.
But it's like, from what I've learned throughout my life, is go find somebody who's better than you, and go just go. What are you doing? Let me watch. Let me follow. And that's kind of like my Christian walk too. It's like, who's doing really good things?
Yeah.
Who's
Where's the fruit?
Yeah. That's exactly.
Yeah.
Where's the fruit? And I'm gonna follow. I'm gonna watch. I'm gonna learn. I'm not gonna just blindly follow, but I'm gonna keep my eyes wide open.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna say, does this match up with Scripture? And are you walking the walk? And is the fruit there? And there's a lot of lessons I've learned from being an elite level athlete, and especially in different venues, in completely different sports.
Yeah.
So I've really had a great journey in my life, by praise Jesus, that he's just put me in all these great places and given me roles as leaderships, and he's taken them away. And I thought at the time, when I was just like, I really want to lead. Like, I'm like the coach of the national team, I'm a coach, the Olympic coach. And I was just feeling the Lord saying, it's time to leave. I put you here for this time, and now I'm going to take you away.
Yeah.
And I can see the fruit of what I did while I was there.
Yeah.
Young men. For example, I had one young man that I got called in to be the coach, and they're like, "Here's the program, build it." And it was like, okay. So I grabbed a young man from Parker, Colorado, just 45 minutes north of Colorado Springs, and he was 14-year-old giant athlete. And they're like, well, he's 14. He can't be at the Olympic Training Center. Well, am I leading this, or are you? Like, are you going to tell me step by step who I can recruit, who I can't? And I grabbed another kid from South Colorado Springs, which is the rough part of town, the trailer park, the kid that got kicked out of high school as a junior for smoking weed.
Yeah.
And didn't have a dad. And I said, Tracy, come in here. I want you to be a part of this. Oh, you can't bring, like, there was all these you can't. And it was like, where's the book? Where's the rule book that says I can't do these things? I'm going to do these things.
Yeah.
And I've been to both their baptisms,
Man,
and it's like, and these two men excelled. Colton was a world champion in the under 20. He's been on world teams. He's been on Olympic teams. Tracy was a world medalist. Now he's in the WWE, and he's going to make a bigger splash there. But when I left, he was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And it was like, well, I don't want you to not do this. He's like, well, God's calling me to go be an entertainer and do this wrestling type stuff. But
the next thing.
But I mean, it's just I saw the fruit, and it's like you've accomplished what I sent you here for, and I want you to move on, and that's kind of where I'm at, and I'm trying to figure this out. I'm navigating this, and I like I said, I have a church, but it's an hour and a half or an hour away from either one of my houses.
I think stuff like this is going to be helpful for that. Finding guys, getting them connected together. Hopefully, our brotherhood can be a part of that, connecting some of these guys and letting them know, like, all right, maybe there's someone that's closer to you than you think, and maybe we can start to build some of these communities where it's robust across the board. It's robust theologically. It's robust in its worship. It's robust in the pastorate there, but it's also robust in all of these other ways too that we do need.
Yeah.
And we need the physical side of things. We need guys who are comfortable in a fight, comfortable in a conflict. And I think we're moving in that direction. And like seeing you guys like you here is really, really encouraging in that way. I think.
Well, I wasn't planning on being here.
Right.
My wife's with my daughter right now. They're dealing with some stuff, some really hard, difficult things they're dealing with right now. And I was holding the fort down at the business and running the gym, and she was like, "You need to go out there, Gabe. Why don't you come out? Like, you need to come out." And so I just think God just kind of said, "Go buy a tent, plane ticket, and get out here." Even though I was not planning. I mean, I could listen to this online,
right?
But I couldn't meet you and meet Cam and just learn more here. There's just so many reasons that God was telling me you need to be here, even though I'm like, feel like a loner out here and stuff. It's like, I'm like walking around, everybody's got their family, and I'm just like, hanging out by myself.
Well, I'm really glad that you walked through the door over there and didn't know where to check in, and I was able to help you. It's been absolutely awesome. Really, really glad. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks,
really
Dave.
appreciate it. Awesome talking to you.
You bet, brother.
Glad you're on our side.
Thanks, you dude.
Appreciate it.